Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for attending and participating in this open forum. My name is Isabel Lois. I'm a senior policy advisor at the Swiss Federal Office of Communications, and I'm also vice chair of the Commission on Science and Technology for Development, or the CSTD. We have, I think, a very interesting open forum for you today called Building Bridges for WSIS Plus, a multi-stakeholder dialogue. As you can see, we have a great panel here. Let me introduce maybe the panelists a bit. So on my right, we have Anita Gurumurthy, who's Executive Director for IT for Change. And then we have Flavio Recht-Wagner, who's Professor at the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul in Brazil, and also Technical Consultant for CGI Brazil. And then further on the right, we have Eugênio V. Garcia, who's Director of Science, Technology, Innovation and Intellectual Property at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Brazil. And then on my left side, we have first Luisa Lendi, who's a Junior Policy Advisor at the Swiss Federal Office of Communication, and she's our online moderator. And then we have Juan Fernandez, who's a Senior Advisor at the Ministry of Communications for the Government of Cuba. And we then have Maria Fernanda Gracia, who's Honorary Chair of the International Chamber of Commerce. And last but not least, in person, we have Olaf Kolfman, who's working for the Internet Technology Policy and Advocacy at ISOC. And online, we have Min Jiang, who's working at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. So that's our great panel. And maybe before we start the discussion and the conversation, I would like to give the floor to Jorge Cancio, who's co-director of international relations at the Swiss Federal Office of Communications. Jorge, please share some words.
So thank you so much, Isabel. Hello, everyone. My name is Jorge Cancio from the Swiss government, also working together with Isabel, with Luisa, and also with our colleagues Thomas and Remy, who are here on site at the IGF. I won't be long. Many of you know, we have a non-paper that is advocating for WSIS Plus, and WSIS framework that is both up to speed for the digital needs of today's world in terms of substance and in terms of how the UN system works together, both internally and with all the interested stakeholders. So we are offering this non-paper as food for thought for the community, and we look forward to a very substantive discussion at today's forum with all the excellent panelists. I think only the IGF can bring together such a diverse group with so many different sensitivities, and we really are very happy to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jorge, and thank you for sharing a few thoughts on our non-paper. If anyone wants to have a copy or anything, we can always share them with you. And if anyone also wants to sit on the podium, on the panel, please come up and sit here. Don't be shy. I think we can jump in straight into our questions and discussions. We all know what we're talking about. This is not the first session that discusses WSIS and what we want out of it. So I think we will jump right in. I'm going to turn to you, Anita, if that's all right, and maybe ask if you could share some of your thoughts on what specific changes you consider necessary to make the entire WSIS architecture fit for purpose beyond 2025, and how would you implement those changes, and what changes should we make? Maybe you could share a bit on that.
Yeah, thank you very much. I first want to compliment the government of Switzerland for having come out with such a thoughtful non-paper paper, and I really gained a lot out of reading it, and also looking at the original WSIS and GDC texts. What I want to say is that we completely agree that the existing action lines in WSIS Tunis are flexible enough to encompass new challenges, and rather than introducing new action lines or deleting existing ones, updates should be made to the current implementation architecture. I think that's a great starting point. And in fact, I can hazard a few hypotheses on how action lines can actually be redefined. For instance, the first one on the role of public governance, authorities and stakeholders could actually be updated to include common standards for digital public goods and emphasize democratic ownership and control and transparency and accountability of digital public infrastructure. Similarly, Action Line 3 on access to information and knowledge could really encompass the need to tackle the risks to democratic integrity, especially because of misinformation, hate speech, etc. The line, which is the fourth, which speaks about capacity building, could actually look at transformative public digital education, what unfortunately goes by the name of digital literacy, for algorithmified or algorithmized public life, and so on and so forth. You could actually think about different updations, and we from the Global Digital Justice Forum have a list of this kind of updation. But what is critical, I think, is that the architectural gaps in the first place also arise because of one Achilles heel, which is the absence of the significance in all these documents around public financing. I think we know that ODA commitments are not being really respected, and therefore WSIS-related financing is in trouble, and therefore there are architectural gaps, and blended financing is not enough. So I think this is something for SDGs implementation related to the WSIS we really have to look at front and center. I also think that a couple more points that I'd like to make, which have resonances in the non-paper, are to do with better linking the review of WSIS and now the GDC tracks and the IGF's annual review track of WSIS and GDC. How will we imagine this is, I think, very important. What will be the identified metrics across WSIS action lines and GDC tracks? How do we hold our governments to account? How do we know what progress is? And how do we define progress from the point of view of inclusion, diversity, equity, etc.? And how can it be better synergized with annual reviews where national reviews will be presented? So finally, I'd also like to say that it's really, really important that in the business of standard setting and going forward, we're talking about AI. We know that many of the action line holders in the WSIS are really busy with sophisticated and committed groups looking at standard setting. But unfortunately, in all of this, developing country civil society and developing country governments are really absent. And I think that that's something we do need to pay attention to. Otherwise, I think going forward from here, we're not going to really have a robust post-WSIS Plus 20 review process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anita. I think you raised a lot of very important and very specific points that I took well note of. I like how you both gave some ideas on specific action lines where we could do better, and also thinking on how are we calculating progress, how are we celebrating what we have done, what we have achieved, and making sure that that is well recorded. And I will now maybe turn to you, Flavio. Could you share what specific maybe subject matter updates to go further than just the architecture would you believe are essential to make now so that WSIS is truly impactful beyond 2025? How could they be, if needed, integrated into the entire framework?
So thank you, Isabel. Thank you for having me in the session and for the question. Yeah, but first of all, let me also, as Anita, also congratulate the government of Switzerland for the non-paper, which makes very relevant and timely recommendations for the WSIS Plus 20 review process and for the future of the WSIS architecture and processes. So the WSIS action lines are already very comprehensive, and they cover all aspects of the information society and today's digital transformation. They have been written in a technology agnostic way. I heard this expression this morning, and I found it very, very useful, such that the action lines did not lose their validity and strength after 20 years. However, of course, issues that were emerging trends in 2005 or even in 2015 during the WSIS Plus 10 review are now a tangible reality and should be emphasized in the WSIS Plus 20 review and in the follow-up of the WSIS processes. So, first of all, meaningful connectivity. This is still a major challenge. Billions remain still offline, particularly in least developed countries and marginalized communities. Many with internet access still face barriers such as affordability, low digital literacy, lack of relevant content and services, for instance, in their native languages. A second issue is the rapid emergence of artificial intelligence everyone is talking about. Its impact, both positive and negative, continues to expand, affecting labor, ethics, the environment, and still deserve careful assessment by the society. So the action lines must be revised as AI acts both as an enabler but also as a threat across many areas, many action lines. Data governance, which is closely tied to AI. We now live in a data economy. Many in the global south raise concerns, serious concerns about data colonialism, advocate for data sovereignty, and this cannot be neglected and must be a key focus of the WSIS Plus 20 review process. Social media and digital platforms, barely emerging 20 years ago, are now ubiquitous. They empower communication, content creation, SMEs, but also fuel disinformation and hate speech. Information integrity has become a critical issue requiring balanced solutions that at the same time protect empowerment while combating harmful content. Human rights must be protected online as offline, covering freedom of speech, gender equity, rights of marginalized groups, children's rights, privacy, and more. And this remains one of the most pressing concerns in today's digital world. A growing issue in recent years is the energy consumption of ICTs. ICTs now account for an estimated 5 to 6% of global energy use, a figure which is rising very rapidly due to AI. And while action lines emphasize ICT's role in environmental protection, their growing energy impact requires now urgent attention to energy-efficient solutions. Finally, there is increasing demand for digital regulation and legislation. This is a different perspective, to combat disinformation, market concentration, labor disruptions, and more, and also to assert digital sovereignty, which is claimed in many countries, in many jurisdictions. However, as regulation is a matter of national sovereignty, the WSIS Plus 20 review process should promote harmonized legislation that supports digital sovereignty without undermining the full potential of the internet as a globally connected resource. And the final point, the integration of the WSIS action lines with the SDGs must be strengthened. Though already mapped to the SDGs, the digitalization's role in sustainable development needs clearer, actionable connections, especially beyond 2030 and when the SDGs should be revised. So thank you for your attention and look forward to the continuation of this discussion.
Thank you, Flavio, for your very comprehensive and very important list of different subject matters that we need to consider now that we're looking for the WSIS review and that we want to implement further this year. Maybe I will take the point to just remind everyone we are many panelists. Everybody's an expert, so you have a lot to say, but try to keep your remarks as short as possible so that we can have a discussion. And I will turn to you, Maria Fernanda. So WSIS has always highlighted the multi-stakeholder participation as a sort of a core principle. What would meaningful inclusion look like in the WSIS Plus 20 review and the implementation after this year, and what is missing today?
Thank you, Isabel. It is a pleasure to join you this afternoon, and thank you to the Swiss government. I'm Maria Fernanda Garza, Honorary Chair of the International Chamber of Commerce and member of the leadership panel. Since the WSIS was envisioned in 2005, ICC has been deeply engaged, lending the support of the global business community for a people-centered, inclusive, and development-oriented information society. And the outputs from this process, the Tunis Agenda and the Geneva Action Plan, focus on creating a truly global internet where everyone can benefit from what it has to offer. Since 2003, the world around us has been evolving significantly, with new challenges on the governance of the Internet, leading to fragmented policy responses that have also been influenced by the evolution of the digital technologies that are based on or go beyond the Internet. But WSIS set us out with a uniform vision and offer us a toolbox to cope with these challenges of technology. So while 20 years have passed since this toolbox was created and new challenges have surfaced, the most important question we need to ask ourselves is whether we have been using it effectively. The WSIS architecture provides a unique and inclusive distributed governance model that promoting interoperability, multi-stakeholder collaboration to address the policy, regulatory, and legal space around the Internet and digital technologies more broadly. Bringing all of these pieces together is why WSIS created the IGF. So at less than halfway to the WSIS Plus 20 review, we must rethink how to take the existing architecture into the future. And ICC shares the views presented in the Switzerland non-paper for WSIS Plus framework, which called for strengthening existing structure, addressing the architectural gaps of the WSIS process, and enhancing the IGF. The WSIS Plus 20 process must not only take about inclusion, but operationalize it by integrating the implementation of the GDC as part of the WSIS Plus 20 outcomes to avoid duplications and resource strain, and by giving the IGF a permanent mandate through sustainable funding. So as a key convener of bottom-up, inclusive multi-stakeholder dialogue on digital policy issues, the IGF has demonstrated its value over the past 20 years, especially as technology has evolved and policy challenges become more complex. So when we talk about meaningful inclusion in the WSIS Plus 20 review and implementation, we mean ensuring meaningful opportunities for all stakeholders to deliver key digital policy questions of the day. Participation and informed input from all stakeholder groups will ensure that the policies and regulations are commercially viable and technically feasible, and that privacy and human rights are protected. Leaving no one behind in the digital age means ensuring that everyone has a seat at the table, but also a voice and a power to shape the digital future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria Fernanda. I really liked the point you made on the fact that we have a toolbox, but are we really using all of the tools? Are we using it in the best way? I think that's a very good metaphor for us to think about, especially this year. And I will turn now to our online speaker, Min. Maybe you could share a bit on what you see as the main challenges or concerns that the academic community is raising now regarding the role of the IGF within the broader WSIS architecture.
Thanks for having me on this panel, and thanks Jorge, Isabel, and Luisa for the great non-paper. The academic community is an integral part of the multi-stakeholder model that underpins IGF and WSIS structures and processes. Besides a forum like this, the academic community often also works with other stakeholders in governmental, technical, business communities, and civil society to advance research, ideas, and well-being in our society. From an academic perspective, IGF faces some challenges within the broader WSIS and digital governance architecture. I will flag two issues for consideration. First is deliberation versus decision-making. IGF by mandate is a non-binding deliberative structure under the auspice of UN that allows critical issues of internet governance or digital governance to emerge from the confluence of diverse communities. Unfortunately, also limited by its design, a lot of the great IGF discussions and outcomes do not necessarily land in decision-making fora at the UN regional or national levels. Structurally, it seems a conveyor belt of some sorts needs to exist between IGF and the larger WSIS infrastructure, as well as between multi-stakeholder and multilateral processes to transmit and even integrate IGF outcomes more effectively into decision-making processes. Otherwise, we risk taking time away from making actual binding decisions to address critical issues and challenges. A second related issue is the limited visibility and capacity of IGF in the whole universe of WSIS and digital policy making processes. Without a permanent mandate, IGF is subject to periodical WSIS review. Also, as already mentioned by Maria Fernanda, without sustainable funding, IGF really risks its status as one of the most diverse digital governance fora based on multi-holder principles. Also, with a proliferating number of organizations and processes, now also including GDC, IGF faces a kind of existential question. Many see, GDC's multilateral process and IGF's multi-stakeholder process as complementary rather than antithetical to each other. So there's no reason why the two cannot collaborate under the same UN umbrella to address pressing issues more effectively. Thank you for your attention and look forward to more discussions.
Thank you so much, Min. I think you raised many important points on what we're looking for now at the IGF and how we can make it potentially stronger now with the WSIS Plus 20 review. I'm going to turn to you, Juan. There is a growing complexity in this digital governance question. So what form of coordination, roadmap, shared framework, joint mechanisms, or anything in that sort of sense would you see linking the different processes? And I'm particularly thinking about WSIS and GDC, but maybe there's other points you also want to raise. And we also have a slide that we're sharing behind.
Thank you, Isabel. First of all, thank the organizer of this panel for having me. And the audience, can you bear with me because I will present 3 slides because, as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So that way I have to speak less and we will have more time to get the interaction with you. That is what is our interest. My first slide is just to motivate. It's taken from the book that's there at the right, Governing AI for Humanity. That, by the way, I recommend the book. But this slide shows 7 processes, not from UN, of course, related with AI, and it makes the list of which countries has participated in them. As you see with the yellow in the bottom, most of the countries and mostly of the South cannot participate in all of them, or even in some of them. So this raises this situation that, because, of course, I agree with the substantive issues that was said by my previous speakers, but in the end, work has to be done, and we have to do it through mechanisms, through something, and we cannot have too many of them, because otherwise it's impossible, especially for developing country, to be in all of them. In that sense, I agree with what is said in the document from the Swiss government, the non-paper paper, and also from what Garza just said, that we can keep, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We can keep the processes that were established during WSIS, of course, perfecting them now that we have the experience of the years, and are these 4 that are in the screen now. The IGF that we are here now, the CSTD, the WSIS Forum, and also the UN General Assembly. And there's some arrows in the middle that is not there only for the show. Those arrows means that there need to be some institutional linkage and some coordination between them to avoid duplication. In the Swiss document, they go into details. I'm not going to get into the details. You can check it in the document. They mention UNGIS, the United Nations Group of Information Society, that groups all the agencies in the US. But I just said told the Under Secretary General that was in another meeting that beyond that we need to have a more fluid, substantive linkages and liaisons between all of this. And just to finish the last slide, I will just briefly, of course, I open to question and to, if you want me to go into more details, but just quickly to say why the essence of those four mechanisms. Of course, first we have the IGF. And I put them first not by chance, because the IGF is an agenda setter. It's where from bottom up, from the national and regional IGF, problems are presented. Problems that sometimes, and many times, they're not heard at the global level. So it's a natural channel to channel, by the way, to channel those problems to the UN at large and to the international community at large. As Vint Cerf says in the previous IGF, in one of his interventions, he said, IGF may not be the place to solve the problem, but it's certainly the place to frame the problems. So that's a very important contribution of IGF, and of course, because it's all the stakeholders, policy dialogue, and it's part of the mandate. That does not have to be changed. There's some perfection that can be done, but okay. Then we have the Commission of Science and Technology for Development. This may sound controversial for somebody, but we need an intergovernmental space. Actually, it's happening in the CSTD, and it has the mandate of the yearly review of the outcomes of WSIS. We need that. Somebody is still calling, the enhanced cooperation. If you want, I know the story very well. I was there in Tunis when all that discussion came out, but maybe that's for another time. We don't have time here. But we need an intergovernmental space. And it may be the CSTD. For instance, in CSTD was decided last year to create a group for the analysis of data governance because it's important. So maybe next year they say we will need a group for the analysis of, I don't know, AI governance or blockchain governance, whatever. We need a place where governments can also channel their own concerns and take decisions. Of course, we have the WSIS Forum. The WSIS Forum, the mandate, original mandate, is to have the accountability of the moderator, facilitator of the action lines and to review the action lines. And here I underline the word action, because in some other forum, here in the IGF policy dialogue, in CSTD, we take decisions, but that has to be translated into actions. And I am saying that all these processes can be clearinghouse. The IGF, as a matter of fact, it's a clearinghouse for policy dialogue because everybody come here. But the action lines, I just mentioned in the previous slide, in the first slide, processes that are outside the United Nations, for instance, for artificial intelligence. We don't have an action line for artificial intelligence, but maybe we may have one. But let me put the example of the action line for cybersecurity. We have many processes from cybersecurity. Even the London process that is outside of the UN, we have the open-ended working group in Commission 1 of UNGA. And all those, many people cannot be in all those places at the well, but that could converge. The result of that in the action line on cybersecurity. That is already there. It's the mandate. We should focus on that. I believe that the WSIS Forum has been drifting a little bit away from that core principle. They still do it, but it's not. But I think that should focus on it. And finally, we need the United Nations General Assembly. It's the most inclusive for all member states. But of course, the discussions in the General Assembly, by the way, they're carried out every year during the sessions of the General Assembly. There's 1 or 2 days for Information Society, where the review from CSTD and ECOSOC goes there. So that still should be kept as the place for a political review of the outcomes of the WSIS of the GDC on the future. I will leave it there. I know that you may want me to go deep into something, but if we have time, please ask.
Thank you so much, Juan, first of all, for your enthusiasm in the presentation and for all of the different points. Maybe before I go to you, Olaf, I just want to say we shared the non-paper with our distinguished panelists. This is I'm very happy that you're all commenting and happy and agreeing with the points we did in it. I have not asked them to endorse it. You're free to share your own position and opinions, and I'm happy you all like it. But just to make it clear, they were all free to say whatever they wanted about it. It was just to start the conversation. But Olaf, I will turn to you. Could you maybe share a few of your thoughts on how the IGF is evolving or could evolve as a space for discussion, or maybe a strategic platform to shape the implementation and follow-up across the digital governance landscape?
I will.
And please try to be brief. We want a bit of a discussion.
I will. Is this on?
Yes, it is on.
Yeah, I'll try to do so briefly. First, thank you for sharing the non-paper. These papers are a brilliant contribution to the global brainstorm that is happening around this topic. Brainstorming ourselves a little bit a couple of years ago, we thought about what is actually the IGF and how can we create an atmosphere in which it's a little bit more productive. Min was referring to this conveyor belt to decisions, and in order to have a conveyor belt of decisions, you need perhaps a little bit more structure. One of the things that we identified is that if you look at the various policy policy topics that enter the IGF, they are of various maturity. New ones require forming and norming by their stakeholder groups, while a little bit much more mature policy topics might only need coordination and sharing of experiences. And perhaps if you're even more mature, you can deliver best practices. You can notice that I'm a sort of an engineer going at this as a solution-oriented approach. So if you think about that and you think about policy topics that might be interesting, organize those in verticals. In pillars. I could see internet governance as its internet infrastructure governance as its own pillar, digital public infrastructure as its own pillar, data governance as its own pillar, AI as its own pillar, digital literacy as its own pillar. And by identifying pillars in which there is sufficient scope to do work, you can basically design work programs. Is this really about coordination? Maybe reporting to each other in the community, what the state of things are, where work is being done, what work is being done? Or is this about getting to what are the problems that are on the table? What are the actual dilemmas and the storming and the norming and the forming? Across that matrix, we now get a matrix, we have the horizontals. We have the horizontals of the global equalities, the human rights, the questions around climate, technical competency that needs to be in all of those pillars, and the academic community that needs to come out of that pillars. And by making work programs within those pillars, you have a little bit of a continuity and a chance of producing outcome that will be picked up either by the communities in, say, their regional and national internet governance bodies, picked up by governance, or perhaps reported up to the food chain as you just described it. And with that, that's sort of the idea, the pitch.
Well, thank you so much for the pitch. I really liked it. Short, sweet, and to the point. And without further ado, I will turn to our last panelist. Eugeniu, please. If we're zooming out maybe a bit, but considering the ongoing or starting discussions on WSIS Plus 20 review and the whole UN system, both in New York and in Geneva, how are you approaching this process from sort of a governmental perspective? What are the key issues that are being raised that you think should be raised throughout the different UN fora?
Thank you for the invitation to join this panel. I'm glad to be here. I think you know that the internet in Brazil is based on a multi-stakeholder model. the Internet Steering Committee, also known as CGI. It's, I think most of you are familiar with what we have been doing. We are now celebrating 30 years of this Internet Steering Committee. And you also might be familiar with the São Paulo multistakeholder guidelines that were adopted last year during the Net Mundial Plus 10. And this is the foundation of our position. And I want to congratulate Switzerland for the non-paper. I fully recommend those in the audience to read this non-paper as food for thought, because it has some interesting ideas. One of them, for example, a joint implementation roadmap, because we always talk about avoiding duplication of efforts, avoiding creating new platforms. And it would perhaps make no sense that we have two different tracks dealing with the same subject matter. So we have the WSIS plus 20 and also have the Global Digital Compact, the GDC. So the challenge is how can we integrate both processes? And in terms of negotiations in New York, you have probably read the Elements paper by the co-facilitators of the WSIS process. Our assessment is that they have tried to make a comprehensive document highlighting the benefits of technology, but also the risks associated with digital technologies. But in terms of proposals, actually, the co-facilitators were very cautious. They are promising for the zero draft coming by August, possibly, to come up with some concrete ideas in terms of how we can go forward for this process, which has a timeline for December in New York. But also, this have ongoing negotiations on the GDC, especially the AI track. I think some of you may have read there is the third draft, which are the terms of reference and modalities for the AI scientific panel, the International Independent Scientific Panel on AI, but also the AI Global Dialogue, that is both are coming from the GDC. And this draft was circulated to UN member states, and the deadline is tomorrow. So there is a silence procedure, and we don't know exactly if delegations would break the silence. We have some major players, but also the G77 representing developing countries. I think they are having a meeting, a coordinated meeting today to decide what to do. So all of this is happening at the same time. But what we have is a challenging political environment, with, particularly this year, with growing polarization, geopolitical tensions, the ideological divide. Some people talk about the tech Cold War. So this is difficult, adding complexity to how we organize the global digital ecosystem. I say to my colleagues that we have a window of opportunity, but when we open this window, there is a storm outside. So bad timing, but this is something that we need to see how we can move forward despite these challenges. And to finish, 3 points on the future of IGF. First, that IGF should be made permanent. I think it doesn't make any sense that we have been discussing again and again, renewing the mandate of the IGF, which has a very important role. So, and I see some consensus from delegations in New York about this. Maybe this is a low-hanging fruit that we can secure if we manage to have stable and predictable funding. But this is, of course, my second point. And the third is rebranding IGF. This is another suggestion in the Swiss non-paper, because what we see here, not only in really strong, but also in previous IGFs, we don't talk about internet governance per se. We have AI, we have emerging technologies, several other issues, information integrity, and so on. So this would acknowledge a reality that it's, of course, we need to discuss if this is also feasible. In the question, can we reach a compromise? So I'll stop here and looking forward to the discussions.
Thank you so much, Eugenio. Thank you. And thank you all for your very interesting and important thoughts. We have about half an hour for questions and comments from maybe the audience. I have a few questions if no one has something to say. I'm looking at you, dear listeners. Anyone want to ask something? Otherwise, I have a sort of overarching question that I think we can think about, and maybe if someone wants to come up and ask something, yes, please. The mics are on the side. In the meantime, whilst you walk over to the mic, I think I would like for us to think a bit on our perspective as different stakeholder groups, and maybe think about the main challenges, concerns that we want to get out or that we think we could solve with the WSIS Plus 20 review this year and the outcome. Please, Jacques, I see that you are first on the mic. Go ahead, ask your question or say your comments.
Well, first of all, thank you all the panel for a wonderful contribution. And my name is Jacques Becklinger. I am here speaking as a board member of the European IGF Eurodig, and also a president of the Swiss IGF supporting association. And with pleasure I read in the very good non-paper that also the role of the NRIs are addressed as the ground operation. So in business we know all business is local, and the IGF is not just happening somewhere in New York or somewhere in cyberspace, but it's actually happening on the ground. So I would just remind that, and in a maybe future version 3 would be great to have even expanded a little bit on the role of what's happening on the ground in the, I think, 140 or something local IGFs.
Thank you so much, Jacques. Bertrand, I will immediately take your question or comment.
Anyway, my name is Bertrand de la Chapelle. I'm the Executive Director of the Internet and Jurisdiction Policy Network. I want to focus on one thing. The question of the renewal of the mandate of the IGF has been mentioned. I, of course, like many people, wholeheartedly support the extension and even making it permanent. However, it's not enough. 20 years in, it's time to take stock. I do not expect the WSIS Plus 20 process by December to make decisions on how to improve the IGF further, how to revise its mandate, how to more formally institutionalize it, which I think is the right time 20 years in. However, I take the example of what was achieved with the Working Group on Internet Governance in 2004 and 2005, which was one of the rare, truly multi-stakeholder groupings that initiated not only the definition of Internet governance, but also the concept of a forum that gave birth to the IGF. I strongly believe that 2026, with an impetus coming from the WSIS Plus 20 review, should be about what is and should be the evolution and the revision of the mandate of the IGF to make it formally what it is supposed to be, an issue framing exercise and an agenda setting, as Juan said. And second, how to institutionalize it more coherently in a charter of sorts that establishes the different powers and capacities of the existing building blocks that we have. So I think there is an articulation that we should take into account during the WSIS Plus 20 review to think about how to organize the discussion that has to take place in 2026. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe we can continue. I see there's two more people. Anna, please.
Thank you so much for this conversation. My name is Anna Oosterling, and I'm from Article 19, an international human rights organization focusing on free speech. I really would like to thank Switzerland for this non-paper. It's really much appreciated. I speak on behalf of Article 19. We're also a member of the Global Digital Rights Coalition for WSIS, by the way. 2 points I wanted to amplify in this paper and one question I wanted to put to you. The first point is really, and I've said this in so many sessions already, so I feel like a broken record, but I do think it's important. We need to strengthen the human rights language across the whole WSIS agenda, vision, architecture. This is absolutely crucial. The impacts on the enjoyment of human rights, and I mean all human rights. So I'm talking about freedom of expression, of course, but equally labor, social, economic, etc. rights. The second point I want to make is about inclusion, and this is extremely important. At the moment, in the elements paper, that element is a little bit missing, and we would love to see this a little bit stronger. Also in this non-paper, it could be a little bit stronger. And when I talk about inclusion, I mean this in the broadest sense of the word. It's really important to include all underserved communities across the globe, obviously within the global majority, but also across the globe, that are communities that are not fully represented right now in the WSIS architecture and vision. And then thirdly, I fully agree with what you're saying in terms of trying to integrate. There are so many processes going on, whether it's on data governance, AI governance, etc. There's a GDC. It's becoming very confusing. So I really like your proposal for a joint implementation roadmap. So my question is, could you perhaps elaborate that a little bit more on how you see that in practice? Because we fully support the principle of it, the idea of it, but perhaps it's good to hear your thinking a little bit about how you see that in practice. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anna. And I think we can get the last question. I'm sorry, sir, I don't know your name, but please introduce yourself.
My name is Kosi Amesino and come from Benin. I'm from Ministry of Economy and Finance. I'm also chair of one NGO called Women Be Free. We all are agree that IGF play a good role today. But when we look at the agenda, we are talking about many things. It's not only internet. We are not talking about only internet here. I don't know if it makes sense to see if it's possible today to change the name and look at something very different and who permit us to talk about all the things concerning digital space globally. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please, sir.
My name is Octavian Szofranski. I'm with the Council of Europe in Strasbourg. I have in my hand the declaration of the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe on the World Summit on the Information Society Plus 20 review and the extension of its mandate, which certainly you maybe heard about. It supports this extension with many different recommendations. I will focus on one aspect, cooperation with technology companies that are so important for the building of the architecture of this digital world. The Council of Europe has set up some years ago a partnership with digital companies, and we have consultations. We have them as part of our committee works to develop corporate social responsibility, various ethical standards, ethics by design, etc. What can be done more to engage at the global level, to engage more the business community to forward our goals?
Thank you so much. And yes, I know about the statement. It's actually a very good summary of what we could agree on at the Council of Europe. Bruna, please.
I forgot my headphones for some reason, sorry. No, just 2 points actually. I think we speak a lot about inclusion of stakeholders within the IGF and WSIS, but we often forgot to address what are the gaps and what are the problems around here, right? And as much as many of us, I'm part of a civil society organization as part of civil society stakeholder within the IGF. but it seems that it's growing, that we're forgetting to address all of the gaps, we're forgetting to address the differences in levels of participation, and that's, to me, one of the main points we need to tackle within this review and within the next steps, and looking forward to what could be the next 20 years of the IGF. And just to quote one example, I think we had a rather good session this morning on the future of work in AI, where there was no perspective from civil society in that conversation, in a topic that's so relevant, that's going to be part of what's going to come out of the WSIS review. And it's really relevant that we, again, keep addressing those points and so on. And just jumping briefly into the AI conversation, it's really relevant that we don't just allow for the global north perspective to not to win, but to be the dominant one within this conversation, right? We do have gaps, we do have problems, many countries in the world that are trying to tackle these questions through different lenses. And it's really important that when addressing the inclusion of AI within the WSIS framework, we do there is some sort of evaluation or how we can acknowledge the differences, the perspectives, and not just that the AI Act or, the new vision around this topic that the US government is pushing forward will be the relevant ones. It's really good that we achieve some level of compromise or balance within that. Just that. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Bruna. And I truly agree with the point of working on how we can be more inclusive, on working to always better the multi-stakeholder element of every session we have at IGF, of every part of the system, and to think about it. And on that note, I, of course, would like to highlight the Sao Paulo multi-stakeholder guidelines, which are a very good resource on how we can be and think deeply about multi-stakeholderism and how we can include it in every aspect of our work. Maybe I will open up to my panel around here. Is there anyone who wants to comment or say something on the different points that were raised from the floor? We had a lot of thoughts and ideas on the IGF specifically, but also on some of the priority themes that we have to include now this year in the review on human rights, on inclusivity. I'm looking around at all of you. Anyone who wants to take the floor? I'm sorry. Juan, you want? Please go ahead.
Yeah, just only briefly to comment in the proposal that has been made several times of the change of name of Internet to digital. Earlier this morning, there was the launch of the new edition of the book of our colleague Jovan Kurbahila, and that's an essential book, and he address that problem in depth, and think he is already distributing some notes. I think that in the notes he explained, he even has a graphic with a pyramid of concepts. And of course, what's in a name? We could name it the way we want, if we have the definition of what that means a name. But he argues, and I agree with him, that the definition of Internet as a concept, it encompasses many of the things that is happening today. Because what's digital without Internet nowadays? What is artificial intelligence without Internet or networks based on the Internet protocol? So, of course, there can be arguments in pro and in con, but it's not necessary to change name if that's the name that is already engraved in the minds of many people outside of this room and on of these themes, because that's important. Sometimes we think that we are the only one around working on this, but it's not the case. There are many people taking decisions that influence this that are not technical savvy or something like that, and it's better to keep the things that works and not change it very much. That's the same with name. Of course, if there's a majority that change a name is okay, it will be okay. But that's the way I think that we should study what Jovan said. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Juan, for both the book recommendation and your thoughts on the name change. I think, Eugenio, you wanted to share your thoughts as well. Please go ahead.
Sure. Thank you. Yes, on the IGF, I think becoming more institutionalized or expanding the mandates that I think the discussion here is if the IGF can become policy relevant, because right now we see as all these panels, they are great to have multi-stakeholder engagement, but we are not really negotiating any outcome. And I think when we think about New York and the UN, some member states are clearly opposing any. We had the discussion on AI governance, the global dialogue that is being now considered, and some delegations are against any negotiated outcome. So this is a challenge that we need to face. But I want to go back to one of the questions on inclusion and diversity. Because of course we need to ensure that the inclusion of women and girls, children and youth, or older persons, persons with disabilities, migrants, refugees, internally displaced persons, indigenous peoples, and groups in vulnerable situations. Because I think you know that Brazil will be hosting the COP30 next November in Belém on climate change. And it's the first ever COP in the Amazon rainforest. Because the principle here is nothing about us without us. So we think about indigenous peoples. So please come to Belém and see how reality is in the Amazon, to meet people, engage with them. And we think that digital technologies can be a plus in terms of facilitating more engagement from these groups. So we are preparing like a metaverse. It's for people to engage remotely, because of course nobody can guarantee that we have all these groups represented physically in Belém, but we need to provide solutions, and I think online meetings and online environments would help us to do this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eugenio. And I know that Anita, you also wanted to say something, and I have Min online, and then Olaf. Anita, go ahead.
Thank you. I think I have an overall reflection about the non-paper and, of course, the comments. One thing is that in getting the WSIS architecture right and making it fit for purpose, at least for the next 10 years, an important thing that needs to be done is to look at the evidence on the ground about the realpolitik of how negotiations take place. And I mean, I think it's too crude to say who wins, but what I really mean is how does public interest really get defined? You know, how does it materialize? And to that extent, I must say that Section 7.5, I was not completely convinced that you have thought it through. And I really like the approach that the Australian non-paper takes to, to frame the issues, which it says is, what is the evidence and what have we heard? And what is the evidence in the Australia non-paper is really about studying documentation about what's coming up on specific issues. To that extent, I'd really like to think about the CSTD's role a little bit more carefully, because if we really want to bolster enhanced cooperation and also promote multi-stakeholder cooperation, I think it's important to think about whether a CSTD that's offering guidance, to governments, or the way in which governments bring their thoughts to define issues in the digital arena, will be benefited from private interests also defining the agenda. So, for instance, in the WHO, there have been private philanthropists who have completely defined what illnesses should actually be prioritized in the world. And there is copious amounts of evidence to tell you that that has really not served the world. It does not serve the cause of equity and certainly public health. So the public health of the digital certainly depends on the agenda to be set through democratic processes where people's interest is put ahead. And I'm not sure if private interests get into the CSTD, we are going to be able to see agenda setting in quite the same way that will serve public interests. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anita. And maybe before I give the floor to the next comments, and we only have 15 minutes, so I'm trying to be mindful of the time. I think the point we are trying to raise in the paper, just so that it's clear, is not private interest coming into the spaces, but truly a multi-stakeholder element. So I just wanted to point that out. But we can discuss it further. Please, Olaf, I know that you wanted to say something, and then we have Min online. I have not forgotten you.
It's a bit of the name change that I wanted to get into. When I describe the architecture, I consciously use the word internet infrastructure coordination. I do think that all these pieces, data governance, AI, need to be compacted in one forum, and the name Internet Governance Forum is a nice one. I have no objections keeping them. But I want to tie it back a little bit to the Elements paper. Because if you read the Elements paper, the only place where multi-stakeholderism is being mentioned is in the Internet Governance section. While the other sections, the data governance sections and the AI sections, have a much more multilateral tone. So I do think that we need to keep that, at least that's the way that I read it, and I do think that that is something we need to keep in the back of our minds if we talk about name changes or perhaps even entity changes, that we take care that also those other topics would have global spanning effects, where that flywheel of global IGF, regional IGF, national IGF, and back and forth is actually relevant, stays in place as well.
Thank you so much for your thoughts. Min, online, I know you've been waiting for a bit, and then we have Flavio and maybe also Maria Fernanda.
Thank you. As emphasized already by other speakers on the panel and audience participants, WSIS 20+20, IGF and GDC and many other digital governance processes would have to address the present challenge of AI and the role of the Global South in policymaking processes. AI is currently a central galvanizing issue that intersects with many other issues that you flagged in the non-paper, including data governance, environmental impact, digital divide, information integrity, human rights not only in normative terms, but also in social economic terms, and digital public infrastructure. And why don't we talk about a global public option to AI? So the other piece is the participation of the Global South, and I deem it really critical. This is an old issue that can go back to the New World Information Communication Order, New WICO debate in the 1970s to address the power imbalances between the Global North and Global South. So there's a historical legacy there, but more specifically at the time in the 1970s between the United States and the rest of the world, in a way, sort of the history really rhymes. At the current moment, the US administration is trying to stop individual states from regulating AI in the next decade. So given the limited number of countries, particularly US and China, are really ahead of the rest in AI development, it is really critically important to be globally inclusive in our policymaking processes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Min, and I agree on the essentialness of being inclusive. Flavio, I know you wanted to share your thoughts as well.
Yeah, thank you, Isabel. I would like to make a comment which is somewhat related to the issue raised by Bertrand and also addressed by Olaf, namely how the IGF should evolve in the future, and also to the question of the gaps on the WSIS architecture. We need, of course, a much better integration between the IGF and the WSIS forum. And I think this is almost a low-hanging fruit for the WSIS Plus 20 review process. One possible way to achieve this is through some concrete institutionalized multi-stakeholder coordination mechanism, and this is addressed in the Swiss non-paper. Yeah? This may help fill gaps, avoid duplications, and create an effective exchange of outcomes in both directions between the IGF and the WSIS forum. And this would also help achieve one of the major improvements that is required for the IGF, and this has been said for many years, namely that its multiple outcomes, and for instance from its many intersessional work streams, are conveyed to decision makers in a more effective way. And as Juan very well stated and others, the IGF has a role for agenda setting and bring emerging issues, possible solutions, and even already reactions from the various stakeholder groups to those issues and solutions. And this is a powerful input to other processes or forums involving decision makers. And there we have the WSIS Forum. While the IGF shall continue as a dialogue space, convening all the multi-stakeholder, all the stakeholder groups, the WSIS Forum has a tradition of attracting more the representatives from governments and from UN agencies. Yeah, they discuss the advancements along the WSIS action lines. So the inputs from the IGF should become a concrete and important contribution to the WSIS forums and to the assessment of the action lines.
Thank you so much, Flavio. Maria Fernanda, I will give you the floor now.
Thank you very much. Going back to my early comments on the need to ensure meaningful, regular avenues for stakeholders to deliberate digital policy, the International Chamber of Commerce stands ready to serve as a bridge between businesses around the world and UN efforts to implement and strengthen the WSIS architecture. We can channel the voices of companies, large and small, from every region, ensuring their experiences and concerns are heard. And through ICC Business Action to Support the Information Society, we are engaging with the existing multi-stakeholder efforts to coordinate input into the WSIS Plus 20 review, and we are committed to continue our contributions to those to ensure that the input of the next phase of deliberations is truly representative and truly operational. I'm also pleased to have been able to respond to this task through my role at the IGF Leadership Panel. And on that point, I would urge you to consider that a paper that the Leadership Panel, with the support of the MAG, have put together, the outlook of the IGF, which can serve as an important complement in our broader campaign to strengthen the IGF's role in the UN system, make the IGF a permanent structure supported by the regular UN budget, and ensure the viability of the multi-stakeholder model for the consideration of Internet governance and digital policy issues, and enable the IGF to adapt to future needs as the Internet and digital technologies continue to evolve. And to enable this, we need a solid strategic approach to communications that informs, educates, and elevates interest in the IGF among UN member countries. Our paper provides useful recommendations on developing clear communications channels and messages to demonstrate the influence of IGF discussions on international policy dialogues, including the G20, the G7, and UN bodies, and introducing structured follow-up mechanisms to track and report to the implementation and impact of IGF recommendations, making our contributions more visible and tangible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria Fernanda. And I can only highlight what you just said. It's a very good document, and I recommend, if you have not read it, to read it and consider the different points that are being raised there. Maybe I will use my privilege as moderator and share a few thoughts. I really like that. I think all of you, or most, if not all, have highlighted the importance of having an inclusive participation, of thinking of Global South, also priorities and perspectives for this WSIS Plus 20 review, and getting a fair deal for all. And I think this is something that Switzerland is very aligned with, this idea of, first of all, engaging in the preparation for the review, in the negotiations in a positive way, of trying to find a positive sum gain. We have the opportunity to get something really good, to agree on a document that we're happy about, to next year, when we're starting the implementation of the WSIS Plus 20 outcomes, we're happy with the result. And I think it shows here that there is a willingness to actively contribute to the negotiations, to actively contribute to the inputs on the elements paper, and to find something that's positive. And I think this IGF, at least so far from what I've attended, has really shown the beautiful impact it can have, how the questions that are raised, the sort of the agenda setting power that we've discussed here is really being used and will hopefully I think, come out of a zero draft for the WSIS Plus 20, and then the negotiations, I'm sure, as well. So I think this is something that is very good, and I wanted to highlight this sort of positive outtake that I'm getting from this conversation, and reminding sort of everyone we have time. There's not much time until December, but we still have time to get something great, and considering sort of a fair deal for all is something that's a priority for us. I think we have 4 minutes left. Maybe I could all give you... Oh, sorry, there's a comment online. Apologies, Louisa, please.
Yeah, maybe just allow me to read out a comment from Mark Colwell online, who was talking about and ending up on what Chuck Beglinger said about the importance of the NRIs, and how actually as well it is wished to them to be included in the elements paper, and to have a special mention about the now I think 176 initiatives which are here. So just about the whole ecosystem of the IGF being taken into account. And also he was talking about that the outcomes of the IGF, as well as the intersessional activities over with the 30 dynamic coalitions, that they need to be better communicated, and their concrete outputs advocated both in the IGS as well as in the WSIS forum. There's just a comment to mention was said online.
Thank you so much, Louisa, for reading out the comment and for sharing that. And sorry, I should have been paying more attention to what is happening online. 3 minutes left. Maybe I could give you the opportunity to give a word or a sentence that you wish. If you imagine yourself January 2026, we've finished the negotiations. We have a WSIS Plus 20 review. How do you feel? What are you happy about? May I ask you, Eugenio, to start? And I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
Yes, thank you. I think this is an ongoing conversation. Next, we have the WSIS Forum in Geneva next July, and also the AI for Good summits. So the road to December is to have many opportunities to go deeper into this discussion. But it's essential that we incorporate that the Global South voice are on board, fully on board. Because, and I said about indigenous peoples, nothing about us without us. So that's the same for developing countries. Because if we take the global majority, as they say, we are going nowhere if we don't include them in this the outcome that we expect to achieve by December.
Absolutely. Flavio, one word or one sentence, 2026, what are you happy about?
Yeah, so I think the major challenge for the IGF is not the renewal of its mandate. I think this will be certainly achieved in the WSIS Plus 20 review process, but its future role. So it must have a much more important role already within the WSIS architecture. So in January, I would be very happy, expecting that the IGF has been considered as one of the outcomes of the WSIS Plus 20 review process as the main discussion space for all digital governance issues, not only internet governance, also AI and all other the emerging issues, and a focal point for the follow-up of both the GDC and the WSIS processes.
Thank you.
That would make me happy.
Thank you. Anita.
I think I would like to echo the sentiment of Eugenio, but I'd like to add that in harmonizing the architecture in relation to the WSIS, we shouldn't forget that the WSIS architecture itself needs to be harmonized with the larger agenda of the multilateral system to be just and fair, which includes intersections of the digital agenda with fair trade, with fair intellectual property, with climate justice, gender equality, taxation, competition, and all of those issues that make the voices of the Global South so special, so relevant and pertinent to the WSIS.
Absolutely. Min, online, do you want to share your sentence or your word for?
Yeah, thank you. I believe IGF, WSIS, and GDC share similar goals and aspirations under the same UN umbrella. There is hopefully there is a will, there is a way for us to actually put public interest, Global South, and also in inclusive processes in the spotlight to make the joint architecture happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Juan.
What's the question?
Close your eyes. You're in January 2026. Everything went well. What are you happy about? One word, one sentence.
A lot of work.
Maria Fernanda.
Well, that nobody is left behind in this digital age, and that means ensuring, as I said before, that everyone has a seat at a table, a voice, and the power in shaping the digital future. And that is the vision that embodies the IGF.
It is. Olaf.
We wake up and we have strong commitments from all over the world to bridge that digital divide, and that begins with bringing the internet to the people who don't have it now and want to have it.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much. And maybe I would give my word if I can, and I'm sorry, I know we're over time. I think I would say that we have a fair deal for all. And on that note, I apologize for taking a bit extra of your time, but thank you so much, all of the panelists, for sharing your thoughts, and all of you for listening and sharing your concerns.